Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanam Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. Gurudev. Yesterday we did this. Tasmadyasya mahabaho nigruhitani sarvashah indriyani indriyartebhyah tasya prajna pratishtita. We did this and we I think also did the next verse. Ya nisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagati samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato munehi. We'll do a quick recap of these two before we go on to the next verse. So Bhagwan was talking to Arjuna about how the mind of a Sthita Prajna is. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushtaha Sthita prajnastadochyate. And what it takes to become a Sthita Prajna. Raga dvesha viyuktaistu indriyan vishayais charan. So the person who keeps his raga dveshas senses under control neutralizes them. It's not just suppressing them, but neutralizes the raga dveshas. How? With an attitude of a karma yogi. And a karma yogi is a mumukshu. So he's not after dharma, artha, and kama. Of course, he leads a life dharmically, but the sole purpose and the whole purushartha is directed towards gaining liberation. So one has to take care of raga dveshas, otherwise they are a nuisance. Therefore, whatever is to be done to take care of them must be done. This may imply karma yoga, listening to the teaching, shravana, or further analysis, manana. How the knowledge takes place, what is required for it to become steady, and why it can be so unsteady is what is being discussed in these verses. So then we had this indriyani indriyanam hi charatam yanmanonu vidhiyate tadasya harati prajnam vayurnavamivambhasi. So, how does it become so unsteady? The mind that follows the moving senses indeed robs the person of his knowledge, just as the wind carries away a small boat on the waters. So, that Atma Vasha and Paravasha. If your mind is Paravasha, you have the emotional and intellectual values for things outside in the samsara, then your mind is no better than a little boat that is carried away by the wind on the waters. Whereas if it is Atma Vasha, if you keep your mind and heart together, that brings in that sthirata. See, when the mind is occupied with objects, there is concern, whereas when it is occupied with the self, the Atma, there is no concern, only tranquility. The self will not run away, it stays put. Even if you come back after 20 years, Atma will still be Satchit Ananda. Regardless of which book you read, Atma will not grow into Asat Chit Ananda. Atma is always fullness, limitlessness, Ananda. If the object of your knowledge is the Atma, the self, then there is Ananda for you. And Krishna summed up all that he had said with reference to one's knowledge becoming steady in the following verse. So it is not enough if we have the viveka of what is real and unreal, what is Atma and Anatma. In order for that knowledge, self-knowledge to dawn, one has to neutralize these ragadveshas. Then knowledge, while pursuing knowledge, then that knowledge becomes clearer. And there's a possibility of it becoming steady. Therefore, O mighty armed Arjuna, the knowledge of one whose senses are completely withdrawn, mastered from their respective objects is steady. The word tasmat indicates, we already did this yesterday, but we'll do this one more time, the important verses. The word tasmat indicates that Krishna was summing up this section dealing with description of the mind of a person who has some vision and is making an effort to make his or her knowledge steady. He explained that because the senses are turbulent, they could rob away the mind of such a person. How they do this was also discussed. Krishna addressed Arjuna here as Mahabaho, meaning, O mighty armed Arjuna. One may be mighty armed with reference to one's prowess and skill, but what is needed for self-knowledge is to be mighty armed, that is, strong in the mind, which is more difficult. The prowess and skills that Arjuna had gathered to earn him the name mighty armed were great in their own sphere, in that he was able to control all external enemies, but his ability to control this inner one was the issue here. Such a beautiful sentence. Outer enemies, controlling them, being a mighty soldier, is great in itself, but are we enough equipped? Do we have the inner strength to conquer the inner enemy, the Mahabharata that's happening inside us? Outside Mahabharata is different, but inside Mahabharata, to control the senses, to withdraw them from their respective objects, means to be able to withdraw them at will, just as the turtle withdraws its head and limbs into its shell whenever it senses any danger. If you want to release the senses, release them. If you want to withdraw them, withdraw them. This means that the senses are under your control. Only when you have the capacity to withdraw your senses at will can your knowledge be steady. The idea here is that the knowledge becomes steady only when the mind is freed from the pressure of raga and dvesha. To the extent that you master your likes and dislikes, to that extent your knowledge stays. Because your ragadveshas are neutralized, you can enjoy the benefits of your knowledge. The pressure of ragadveshas being less, the benefits of the knowledge are more. So they are like inversely proportional. The more ragadveshas we have, the less steady knowledge is. It is shaky. But the more ragadveshas are neutralized, they are minimized and neutralized, the more steady the self-knowledge will be. The knowledge is complete when the ragadveshas have no say in your life, when they are all neutralized, when it makes no difference to you whether a desire is fulfilled or not. Only then is there no hindrance to self knowledge. Knowledge and mastery of the mind go hand in hand. There is a certain trick to all this in that, as one's knowledge grows in clarity, mastery of the mind over the ragadveshas also takes place. With a karma yoga attitude, the ragadveshas are mastered to a certain extent and the knowledge becomes clearer. Thus, there is a mutual kinship between the two. So, the lifestyle of a yogi is not just having an attitudinal shift in the mind, but also pursuing knowledge. So, this mutual kinship is what is required. Not enough if you're just um, following or pursuing knowledge. Also, the attitude has to be there. The entire presentation of yoga and the Gita is with reference to ragadveshas. Just give me 1 minute. Take Hruday. So, the entire presentation of yoga and the Gita is with reference to ragadveshas. The psychology of the Gita is ragadvesha psychology. And as a psychology, the Gita itself is adequate and complete. When we are dealing with normal people, Ragadvesha psychology is enough. It implies an order, dharma, adharma, which is looked upon as Ishvara, the Lord, the giver of the fruits of action, all of which bring about a certain neutralization of one's ragadveshas. That is why it is said just following the Gita alone is enough. You don't need to read a lot of texts, but then to follow it truly, sincerely. Taking care of raga dveshas itself brings about a certain tranquility, a cheerfulness to the mind. And as the cheerfulness increases, one's knowledge becomes clearer. Conversely, as the knowledge becomes clearer, one's cheerfulness increases. So they mutually benefit one another. In other words, the pressure caused by raga dveshas is less. Just as a bird requires both wings to take off, so too we require both wings, inquiry and a proper attitude to glide into this knowledge. One wing is as important as the other. Such a beautiful takeaway. Not enough if you just, otherwise will be no better than an armchair Viveki. The term Swamiji used to talk of people who only have Vedantic concepts. They just have some knowledge concepts, that's it. But there is no practical utilization of that. They continue to reel in ragadveshas. So, in order to be a true viveki, a true mumukshu, a true karma yogi, one has to have both the wings in order for this bird to take off. That is inquiry and a proper attitude. या निशा सर्वभूतानां तस्यां जागर्ति संयमी यस्यां जागृति भूतानि सा निशा पश्यतो मुनेः. Sarvabhutanam, for all beings, ya, that which, nisha, night, tasyam, in that, samyami, one who has mastery over oneself, who is wise, jagarti, is awake, yasyam, that in which, bhutani, beings, jagrati, are awake, sa, that, pashyatah munehe, for the wise man who sees nisha, night, sarvabhutanam, ya nisha तस्याम संयमी जागर्ति यस्याम भूतानि जागृति सा पश्यतः मुनेः निशा. Sorry about that. In that which is night for all beings, the one who is wise, who has mastery over oneself, is awake. That in which beings are awake is night for the wise who sees. Krishna had been answering Arjuna's question about how a person of wisdom, a sthita prajna, is defined and how such a person interacts with the world. Upon analysis, we find Krishna's answer a very interesting one. First, he defined a sthita prajna as one who is happy with himself. Atmanyevatmana tushtaha, who is happy with himself by himself, and thereby one who is free from the hold of all desires. One who is able to give up all binding desires as they arise in one's mind, being happy with oneself, in oneself, is awake to the nature of oneself and is therefore wise. The wisdom of such a person is steady. See, one who is able to give up all binding desires. This has been made clear in the beginning itself. We're not talking of non binding desires, we're only talking about binding desires. It is only these binding desires that feed the ragas, and then they become, and that leads also to the rasa, the intellectual and the emotional values. Although Arjuna expressed the second part of his question with the words, "How does a wise person talk, sit, and walk?" the spirit of his question was, "How does such a person interact with the world?" Taking the spirit of Arjuna's question into account, Krishna replied that one's wisdom is steady only when one's mind is no longer a problem. It's all about mind. It's all about the mind. Krishna said that ragadveshas are the cause for one's knowledge being stifled or inhibited. For the person whose sense organs are freed from ragadvesha and whose pursuits are not backed by ragadveshas, the knowledge remains because he or she has a cheerful mind, a mind that is not in the hands of ragadveshas. Krishna then summed up by saying that for the one who has withdrawn the sense organs from the sense objects, the one who has the sense organs with oneself, if indeed this person has self knowledge, that knowledge will be steady. Having said all this, Krishna was not very happy with his reply to Arjuna's question because he knew that to know whether or not another person is wise, you yourself must be wise. How else are you going to know otherwise? Only a person who is wise knows what it takes to be wise. Arjuna thought that the characteristics of a wise person could be a kind of sadhana for him, a means for becoming wise. But how could he understand these characteristics if he himself was not wise? This is what Krishna still had to convey to Arjuna. So Krishna described to him what a Sthita Prajna's characteristics are, how he interacts with the world, and what it takes to be a Sthita Prajna, getting a hold of your ragadveshas, getting them neutralized. But he did not still, he wanted to tell him, unless a person is wise, you would not recognize another person who is wise. Ignorance and knowledge are like night and day. Krishna had talked about the person who is happy with himself or herself. And since a mad man can also be happy with himself, he also pointed out that a Sthita Prajna must have knowledge. Recognizing, however, that his description of a wise person was not complete, Krishna adds this very interesting verse. In essence, what he says is that a wise person is like a wise person, and the other wise cannot really understand such a person without becoming wise. He illustrated his point by saying that what is night for all people is day for a wise person who has the mind and senses with him or her. Such a person is called a samyami here. The word yama means mastery or control over the mind and senses, and samyami, one who has that mastery along with knowledge. It's very interesting that Gurudev has named this the The latest two courses is Sanyam, which is in line with this, having that mastery, inner mastery. Further, Krishna said, that which is day for everyone else is night for the wise person called Muni here. Muni means the one who sees things clearly. Manana Shila. For this person of clear vision, the state that everyone else thinks of as day is night. In other words, when all beings are awake, the Sthita Prajna sleeps. And when they are asleep, the wise person is awake. Does this mean then that one who is wise is some nocturnal being like a bat or a thief who prowls about at night? Not at all. Just as the darkness of night does not allow you to see objects as they are, night here represents darkness with reference to one's knowledge not being clear. The wise person is awake to what is night for all beings, the night of avidya, ignorance. What is not known to people is called the sleep of night, the sleep of darkness or ignorance, avidya nidra. In this sleep of ignorance, people are like somnambulists, sleepwalkers. This state is more than just sleep. These people are all dreamers. They are sleeping but awake, just like in a dream. They are awake and perform all kinds of activities, but still they are asleep because they are not awake to certain realities. So we are all like somnambulists. We are asleep to knowledge, but we are all dreamers. We are all doing things. We're all going about like in a dream. We are like how people are awake in the dream, performing all kinds of activities, but we are asleep. If you are totally asleep or totally awake, you have no problem. The problem is when you are only half awake, this being a state where mistakes are possible. In dream, a person is partly awake, meaning that there is some projection by the mind. The person is not identified with the body and the physical reality, but is identified with memories and thoughts from which a dream world is set up. So, totally asleep is in that total jadatha, whereas totally awake is being completely wise, a jnana nishta. There is no problem. But the problem is in between, where all of us are. All of us, I would include myself, maybe some of us are already enlightened, we don't know. So the problem is only when you're half awake. Because as long as you're half awake, there is this projection of the mind, where the person is still identified either with the body, mind, senses, or the memory, the ego. Like in a dream, the body is not identified, but is still identified with the memories and thoughts. The reality of duality. In the dream world, everything is dual, Dvaita for the person. The knower is distinct from the knower. I'll repeat this. In the dream world, everything is dual, Dvaita for the person. The knower is distinct from the knower. The known is distinct from the knower. And the knowledge, of course, is distinct from the knower, being something that the knower has and for which there is a distinct object, that is the known. Let me repeat this again. The In the dream world, everything is dual, Dvaita for the person. The knower is distinct from the known.
It's more like subject and object, right? The knower being subject and the known being the object.
Yeah, the knower is distinct from the known. The known is distinct from the knower.
Knower, right.
And knowledge, of course, is distinct from the knower, being something that the knower has and for which there is a distinct object, the known.
Mm.
Yeah,
This is more like that pramana, pramata, and
prameya.
prama, prameya, right? Yeah. So
Prama is the knowledge.
no, pramana is the knowledge, right?
Mhm.
Pramata is the knower. It's in the prameya is the object.
Pramana is not knowledge, it's the means.
Means of knowledge. Sorry, yeah, means of knowledge. Pramana. Is that how we? Uh, I remember Nanan said about the flower, but I forgot the example how he put it. Anyway,
So, see,
no,
in a dream, if you look at our own dream,
yeah, no one, no knowledge. Okay.
yeah, there is that duality, isn't it?
Yeah,
There is
subject and the subject.
you, although you are the one who has created that dream,
Mm-hmm.
there is that sense of duality still, because supposing there is you get a nightmare, what happens? You suddenly wake up
Mm-hmm.
because you in the dream are experiencing that nightmare, that horrible dream sequence,
Mm-hmm.
which wakes you up suddenly, and
Mm-hmm.
then you realize, oh, it was only a dream. But as long as you're in the dream state,
You
there
are
is
different
this
from the,
distinction between the
yeah.
knower and the known.
Mm.
That is why in the dream world, everything is dual, Dvaita for the person.
Mm-hmm.
This division in dream is a reality for the dreamer. But upon waking, all the three, the knower, the known, and the knowledge, become one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it? That is what happens. When we wake up from the dream, we say, oh, it was only a dream. And where did that dream come from? It
I
came from
dream.
the person.
Yeah.
So the whole thing becomes one.
Mm-hmm.
The known objects in the dream are not separate from knowledge. The knowledge is not separate from the knower, and the knower is not separate from the waker. All the
Mm.
three that belong to the dream resolve into the waker when the person who is dreaming wakes up. The waker was the knower, the known, and the knowledge in the dream. The knower is the waker. That is why one says, I dreamt. The Atma, the self of the knower that obtained in the dream, obtains also in the waking state, as evidenced by the expression of the experience as I dreamt. I was the one who was dreaming. In the dream, however, everything is a reality. Even the Veda recognizes duality, addressing you as a doer, a karta. Shankara discusses this in his commentary to this verse. The Veda tells you to perform certain karmas, and it also tells you what you will gain by doing them. There are very specific differences mentioned also. It says, this karma will produce this result if it is done in this manner by this person at this time. Thus, rituals to be performed are set out in the Veda, all of which implies duality because it addresses a karta who is different from the karma he does. The Veda that says you are the non dual Brahman addresses you in the earlier sections as a person who wants certain results and who is going to get these results later. The connection between the person and the results is established by performing certain prescribed rituals, the result of which is punya. This punya is what connects the person to the result. The people, rituals, and the results are all different and therefore constitute duality. Your perception also tells you that one object is different from another object. Perception gives rise to different types of knowledge, and based on that knowledge, you conclude that everything is different from you. The first part of the Shruti, as we have seen, also confirms this difference by addressing you as a doer and not as Param Brahma. If the Veda were to address you as Param Brahma, it could not ask you to perform action. Thus, it can only address you as a doer. The Shruti deals with the person who is available right now. You are now a doer, and that doer is addressed. Furthermore, the doer is told that he or she will be an enjoyer later if certain karmas are performed. If they are not done or not done properly, the person will have problems later. Even if a wrong action is done, the doer will still be an enjoyer, but the enjoyment will not be very pleasant. In this way, the Shruti keeps the person in view and talks about what is good and bad for the person, what should be done and what should be avoided. Thus, it looks as though the Shruti is for the doer alone and that duality is a reality. Naturally, then, the person looks upon himself or herself in the waking state as someone different from the world, just as in the dream. This is what is meant by the sleep of ignorance. Because of ignorance alone, the person is said to be sleeping. Sleeping here means that one is a dreamer. The person is not totally sleeping. He or she is awake doing various activities. There is even a valid pramana available to the person, enabling him or her to know that certain actions are right and others are wrong. As long as the sleep of ignorance continues, everything is valid for the person in the waking state, just as it is in dream. One doer is different from every other doer, and one enjoyer is different from every other enjoyer. So, this whole life, this whole world itself is like a huge dream where we are all awake as if we are awake in the dream, just like how we are in our own dream that we create every night. There is this duality that the knower, known, and the knowledge, they're all different. But upon waking, what is happening? They all collapse, become one with the waker. Similarly, if you extrapolate this whole world, although we as though are awake here, we are actually dreaming. Why? Because we are in the sleep of ignorance. In this sleep of ignorance, we are going about doing things as karta and enjoying the results thereof as a bhokta. In this dream itself, the Shruti gives us injunctions, rituals to do to get certain results, right things to do, not right things, right and wrong, dharma, dharma. So, all of this is there in that dream. And then in this whole dream, we see each other as different. Whereas the jnani is awake to this. He is like the person who is woken up from the dream. For him, all of that collapses into just I. There is no duality for the jnani. The physical body is the place of enjoyment, the counter of experience from which you encounter the world. It is the point from which one operates. So this is what in Tattvabodh we learned. Sthula shariram kim? Panchikrita panchamahabhutaihi kritam satkarmajanyam sukhadukkadi bhogayatanam shariram asti jayate vardhate viparinamate apakshiyate vinashyatiti shad vikaravat etat sthula shariram. So it is the place of enjoyment, the counter of experience, bhogayatanam, from which you encounter the world. You are an enjoyer, and a mosquito is also an enjoyer, you being the object of its enjoyment. Thus, you find there are many enjoyers and different kinds of enjoyments. There are different doers and different types of doing, all of which are valid. So, at one level of reality, they're all valid, right? Therefore, pain and pleasure are valid. That I'm a small person is valid. That I'm someone who's struggling to prove myself to be somebody is valid. That the struggle never comes to an end is also valid. So, this is the reality of duality.
Duality, right?
Duality.
So when the thing is valid, it says, right? So it's probably because you're thinking.
As long as you are in the dual world,
Dual world,
all
yeah.
this is valid.
Mm,
Everything is valid, right?
right. So they're comparing with the dream world.
Correct.
Dream world, and then yeah. So you mentioned about the wise person, right? So
Hmm.
the wise person is not in the dream world,
The wise person is awake.
right? He's aware.
Yanisha, yeah. Yanisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagarti samyami. So the samyami, the person who has his mind and senses in
Vision
control,
is here, yeah. Mm.
he is jagrati. He is awake to
Awake.
the night.
Night of
What
all
is night
people,
to everybody else?
right? Yeah.
And what is that night? It is the night
Ignorance,
of sleep, of darkness, of the darkness of ignorance.
ignorance, yeah.
I mean, we are so, we should be really grateful for having this entity called the dream, because we do this every day, day in and day out.
Mm-hmm.
Why Gurudev said, if you understand sleep, you would understand reality. Sleep
Mm.
means sleep and its accompanying dream and the dream sequence and the deep sleep, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So we are all moving around as sleepwalkers in this world of objects. And we're all part of this huge dream.
That's what he is saying, somnambulist.
Somnambulist.
Sleep. You wonder really you're sleepwalker. No,
Yeah.
basically in the way they're comparing it with the ignorance. Mm. You're all sleepwalkers.
It's a projection of the mind. No, dream is nothing but a projection of the mind. Even this entire world is a projection of our own mind.
Right, right.
How
Yeah.
I perceive the mind, how I perceive the world.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in a state of great gratitude, I see the world as a blessing. If I'm in a state of grumbling, I see the world as a place of complaints, a place of problems. So it is upon my perception of the world. It's again a projection of the world, projection of my own mind.
Mm-hmm.
So each of us is the center of the universe. And it is this that, with the wake of knowledge, you understand that there is only one. So we'll go to the next. The reality of oneness. Everything seems to be valid to those who see themselves as distinct. But amidst all this validity, one thing alone is not known, the Paramartha Tattva. I will repeat this. The reality of oneness. Everything seems to be valid to those who see themselves as distinct. So, as long as there is this duality, you see things as distinct from you, it is valid. Everything is valid. But amidst all this validity, one thing alone is not known, the Paramartha Tattva. The word Tattva means reality, and Paramartha Tattva is the ultimate reality, that which is the essential reality of everything. The differences that seem so real in dream and waking have no independent reality apart from this essential reality. What is essentially there is only one thing, and that is what I am. Tad aham asmi. The knower is myself. The known is myself. The knowledge is myself. The doer is myself. The doing is myself. And the done is myself. The world is myself. And the knower of the world is also myself. That all three, knower, known, and knowledge, are myself in an entirely different vision altogether. Our myself is an entirely different vision altogether. In reality, there is no difference whatsoever. For a wise person, the Paramartha Tattva is one thing alone, and it is oneself. This Paramartha Tattva is not recognized by those who are not wise. For them, everything is real. This means that there is more than one reality for such people, which is why the world is always too much for them. To think that everyone is different from you means that everyone is as real as you are. Words too will have their own reality, so that everything is as real as everything else. Naturally, then, you find a world which is dual. In other words, you experience samsara. I will read these two paras one more time. Let me just complete this. While others are in this great sleep of ignorance, the wise person is awake to the Paramartha Tattva. He or she is awake to the reality of the I, the knowledge of which nullifies the division between the knower and the known, since in reality there is no division. Therefore, I am all of this. Ahamidam sarvam. Previously, I was only one among the many. Now, the vision is that immanently I am everything, and transcendently I am free from everything. To this fact, the wise person, the samyami, is awake. I will read these three paras one more time. The reality of oneness. So we understood the reality of duality. Everything seems to be valid to those who see themselves as distinct. But amidst all this validity, one thing alone is not known, Paramartha Tattva. The word Tattva means reality, and Paramartha Tattva is the ultimate reality, that which is the essential reality of everything. The differences that seem so real in dream and waking have no independent reality apart from this essential reality. So when we go back to Tattva Bodh, Brahma is the only reality, is the ultimate, is the truth. Brahmashraya Maya. From that comes Maya. So this whole differences that seem so real have no real existence apart from the ultimate reality, from this essential reality. So what is essentially there is only one thing, and that is what I am. Tadaham asmi. The knower is myself, the known is myself, the knowledge is myself, the doer is myself, the doing is myself, and the done is myself. The world is myself, and the knower of the world is also myself. That all three, knower, known, knowledge, are myself, is an entirely different vision altogether. In reality, there is no difference whatsoever. So, if we take our mind back to the dream, in the dream, we see things as dual. But upon waking up, all of that collapses into one. So, similarly, what is essentially there is only one thing, and that is what I am. So, once we are awake to this knowledge, the knower known knowledge becomes one. That is the Paramartha Tattva. So, for a person who's living in the samsara, everything is valid, everything is seen as other than him. What is lacking is he is not awake to the Paramartha Tattva, the ultimate reality. Whereas for a wise person, the Paramartha Tattva is one thing alone and it is oneself. So the wise person is awake only to this. This Paramartha Tattva is not recognized by those who are not wise. For them, everything is real. This means that there is more than one reality for such people, which is why the world is always too much for them. So the world is too much for whom? For those that are not wise. To think that everyone is different from you means that everyone is as real as you are. Words too will have their own realities, so that everything is as real as everything else. Which is why if someone says something nasty to you, you consider them as real and you get affected, humiliated. Someone says something nice and pleasant, you start getting, your ego gets boosted. Naturally, then you find a world which is dual. In other words, you experience samsara. While others are in this great sleep of ignorance, the wise person is awake to the Paramartha Tattva. He or she is awake to the reality of the I, the knowledge of which nullifies the division between the knower and the known, since in reality there is no division. Therefore, I am all of this, ahamidam sarvam. Previously, I was only one among the many. Now, the vision is that immanently I am everything, and transcendently I am free from everything. To this fact, the wise person, the samyami, is awake. So, just like how when we wake up from a dream, the knower, knowledge known in the dream become one. The dreamer becomes the waker. Similarly, for a jnani who is awake in this great sleep of ignorance, he is awake to the Paramartha Tattva. So, immanently, he is everything, but transcendently, in the world of duality, when he moves around, I am free from everything. I am not this neti neti. I am not the mind, I am not the body, I am not the senses. To this fact, the wise person is awake. So let's stop here. We'll share our understanding. We'll continue this tomorrow. Does anyone want to share anything? So, what we have to hold on to is pursue this Paramartha Tattva. What we are right now doing is holding on to this world of objects. We're holding on to this dream. And we're imputing reality onto everything. And that is why we are suffering. That is why we have pain is inevitable, but that suffering comes because we are considering everything as real. Whereas the more and more we are in this knowledge, we'll see pain as pain and it will not become a suffering for us. You'll see yourself free from everything. Pain is there, it is happening in the body. That is there, that's it. You will do whatever is required to be done for the pain to be resolved. You will not convert that pain into a complaint. So we'll stop here. We still have, this is a pretty longish verse. It's an important verse. Yeah, talks about a lot of examples given. Vision of the wise and otherwise. We'll do this tomorrow. Yeah. We're so blessed that we have such a beautiful, we have Jagat Guru in the form of Krishna, who has taken care to see that all, any possible doubts are all taken care of. Only a wise can understand what a wise person is, not another wise person. Forget about understanding as long as you're reeling in ignorance. That is why it is said the ways of the wise are incomprehensible. You cannot understand, they're unpredictable. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Jai Gurudev. I'm playing Maya Panchakam today. Let's read the transcription of this verse, these verses, for us to understand what this Maya is all about. Becomes relevant for us in this world, in this verse especially, that we're talking about the dream and and what is Paramartha Tattva.
निरुपमनित्यनिरंशकेऽप्यखण्डे मयि चिति सर्वविकल्पनादिशून्ये घटयति जगदीश जीवभेदम् त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया श्रुतिशतनिगमान्तशोधकानपि अहह धनादिनिदर्शनेन सद्यः कलुषयति चतुष्पदाद्यभिन्ना न घटितघटना पडीयसी माया सुखचिदखण्डविबोधमद्वितीयम् वियदनलादिविनिर्मित्ते नियोज्य भ्रमयति भवसागरे नितान्तम् त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया अपगतगुणवर्णजातिभेदे सुखचितिविप्रविडाद्यहङ्कृतिं च स्फुटयति सुतदारकेहमोहम् त्वघटितघटना पटीयसी माया विधिहरिहरविभेदमप्यखण्डे बत विरचय्य बुधानपि प्रकामम् भ्रमयति हरिहरविभेदभावान् घटितघटना पटीयसी माया त्वघटितघटना पटी